I would be talking to celebrities or people that have influence where they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I want to launch an NFT project. I probably spent more time convincing celebrities to not launch an
Mm.
NFT project than to launch one, right?
Yeah.
And because, I'm like, it's going to be a lot of work, right? And people are going to like want like extra
More.
things from you
Yeah. Yeah.
more, right? And it's like, frankly, like, if you don't need to do it, like, don't do
Yeah.
it, right? Like, unless you're passionate about it, right? If you're like, oh, this is a way I can make quick money, that's like, no, like, you're not. It's going to be a lot more work than you think it is.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm here with Gmoney, the founder of 9DCC. Very, very happy to have a chat with him today. How are you, Gmoney?
Hey, how are you? It's a pleasure to chat. Thank you for having me on the pod.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm very, very excited to learn more about you, what you are building, and also understand your story because, I mean, I've seen your name and I've seen you around for a while everywhere in events on Twitter, different kind of conferences, and I'm curious because I think you have been around for a while. I joined Web3 3 years ago, and I'm curious about your beginnings in the space, and maybe even going back a bit before crypto. What was your background, your profession? What can you tell us about your professional journey? Let's call it that way.
Cool. So yeah, I have a background in equities. I used to trade long, short U.S. equities for my own account, and I used to trade everything, but I would specialize mostly in tech and consumer discretionary. I got involved in crypto in 2017. Was involved in like that cycle. I remember in early 2018, I was like, "This tech is revolutionary, and it's going to change the world." But at that time, I was like, "The tech is still too early." So I decided to sell whatever I had that was liquid, keep an eye on the crypto market from afar, and then in March of 2020, um, when COVID hits, at some point over the next couple months, Powell says he's going to pretty much buy every asset out there and print unlimited funds. So I wired a bunch of money back over to Coinbase, bought a bunch of ETH, and then started going down the DeFi rabbit hole. So I was really cutting my teeth on DeFi summer, and then towards the end of the summer, I found NFTs, and they immediately started making sense to me because I had been playing Fortnite for the previous few months before, and I just saw how much money kids were spending on skins, and how much they really loved it. And I was like, yeah, well, what better way to prove you own something that's scarce than to have like this online digital record of it through blockchain? Like, this is literally what blockchain is for. So I started going down the rabbit hole there. I ended up, I guess, becoming pretty notable in late 2020, early 2021. I ended up doing a collaboration with Adidas at the end of 2021, and after that, I turned to my team. I was like, all right, well, like, I wanted to launch a luxury fashion brand. I had wanted to launch a fashion brand from when I entered into the space. I
Hmm.
just thought it was still a little too early to do that at that point in time, because even though there was a lot of talk of the metaverse, not many people were hanging out in the metaverse outside of like Roblox and Fortnite.
Hmm.
So it was at that point that I was like, I want to start a brand. I want to link it with NFTs, right? I have NFC chips. We put NFC chips on all of the products, link to NFTs, because as a consumer, that's something that I want to see right
Hmm.
out there. Of like, if I buy something that's limited edition, I would like to know how many of them, like, verifiably, how many of them are in existence. So
Yeah.
that was kind of, the framework for launching 90cc, and then it's obviously evolved since then, because I do think the like an NFC, a digital twin slash certificate of authenticity linked to a physical product, is table stakes for what you can do with the tech. But what I find really enticing and really fun is working in the design space of how do you gamify that experience and build
Mhm.
community around it.
Awesome. I mean, there is so much content there in what you just said. So, um, first, I'm curious about why a luxury fashion brand? Why was your interest there? Is this something that because of the technology you thought it made sense to connect it to more of a luxury brand, or was it your interest? You wanted to go that route. Why luxury fashion brand?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and honestly, I think it's a mixture of both, right? I think obviously, um, I had been quite successful in my career up until that point, and even more so after getting into the NFT space. And so like I do enjoy some of like the nicer brands out there, like the luxury items. I like them honestly myself. So like from the start, the framework of what I wanted to build is, and this is the way we do everything, is like, is this something that I want? Is this something that I would want to wear? Is this something that I would want to do or be associated with, right? And I think at the time, you have to remember this is late 2021. Board apes are probably at that point the most valuable NFTs in the market. There's a lot of PFP projects out there, and like the products that existed was very like for lack of a better word is juvenile, right? Like
Yeah.
very cartoon graphic-y. And
Hmm.
so I wanted something that I said, hey, how can I show, right? Because like at that time, what existed in the market was I could either show that I'm crypto native by wearing like a graphic hoodie, right?
Hmm.
That isn't necessarily what my aesthetic is, or I can go out and buy like Prada, Louis Vuitton, right? Christian Dior, stuff like that. That doesn't showcase that I'm a crypto native. And I was like, well, what about people like me that like I do want to dress well, I want to have a well-made product, but I don't want it to be really loud and in your face. I want it to
Hmm.
be
Yeah.
subtle and like subdued, right? And that was kind of the basis for the brand. Um, in terms of like merging why we went high end versus low end, one is obviously is like where my interests lie, but then
Hmm.
also I think just understanding like the whole scarcity model that worked with PFPs, right? Of like the reason why a lot of these things and still to this day are worth what they are is because it's not like there's a million copies of them out there, right? There's 10,000 crypto punks. I'm a huge crypto punk advocate, right? There's only 10,000 of them that will ever exist. I own an ape. There's only, what is it, 25 of them that will ever exist, And
Yeah.
so it just like playing into that model. And, we've experienced like a lot of great success with it. So I've been happy with the way we launched because our initial drop was iteration one, which was this black t-shirt, right,
Hmm.
of which we sold 1,000 in under 2 minutes. And
Hmm.
then our second drop was a collaboration with Snowfro, where we
Hmm.
took the squiggly we took the squiggle algorithm, and instead of a squiggly line output, it's a straight line output, right? And it's
Okay.
using the same exact algorithm. And so I and that drop, when it went to digital, sold out in under 7 minutes. So I think
Amazing.
when I think about that, and I think about, yeah, I think it's an underserved market of crypto natives that want to signal that they're in crypto without necessarily having
Yeah.
to have the experience of maybe wearing merch that isn't of the quality that they would want to wear or that they would feel comfortable wearing out to dinner or a club on a Friday night. And that was really where 90cc was born.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's something that you know I try to somehow show my interest, what I'm a fan of. But I don't in terms of crypto and NFTs, I'm a big fan of generative art, AI art. You mentioned the squiggles, but I cannot share that only with the art, right? But not I cannot wear anything now. Like 90cc's there. I also have seen the squiggle sweaters. So some things that are starting to appear that I really like, but maybe 1 year ago, if it's not because of your brand, there wasn't anything around, right? And I think this is something that people are more interested as the space grows to wear what they like. So this makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned collaborations first. Adidas, I think that was before you created the brand, and then you mentioned Snowfro. Um, First, what was the collaboration with Adidas like? Was that when you did that? Was kind of the made you go all in 90cc after experiencing that with Adidas, or not really? What did it consist of, the collaboration with Adidas?
Yeah, so that was really the way that came about was through a DM that I got on Twitter of somebody on the Adidas team messaging me, telling me that they were part of the Adidas team, they liked what I was doing, and they wanted to have a call. And
Okay.
to be perfectly honest, like I had no idea if they were part of the Adidas team for like the first, I don't know, 2.5 months that we were speaking, and we would speak like, for whatever hours at this point. But I
Yeah.
remember the first time I took that call, I'm like, what if this guy does really work at Adidas? What's 20 minutes of my time? Turns out, obviously, it was Adidas. I ended up being one of the collaborators along with Punk's Comic and Bored Ape Yacht Club. And we did an NFT drop, which was I recently learned that it's the biggest hype drop of all time, which occurred, you know, 10 days or about 10 days before Christmas. And, it was very, uh, it was like, it was a really great experience, right? Like I said at a couple minutes ago, is that I was always interested in fashion when I entered into the space. So it was just lucky enough that Adidas did come knocking on my door to chat.
Hmm.
And I remember after, the Adidas drop, I was like, all right, well, again, like there was this thing is like, even though I'm a collaborator on the Adidas project, right? And myself, and I don't speak for all the other partners, but like this is, what it was like is ultimately like it's Adidas's vision, right? We were sitting there and we were giving them mentorship of like, hey, this is where I think you should go, this is what we think you should do, like this is how you approach or talk to the community members and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it was their product, right? And so part of my takeaway from that experience was like, hey, like I want to see like my vision unencumbered by, let's say, a collaborator and
Yeah.
or somebody else that has their own vision that they're trying to succeed or trying to put out there. And so that really was like the foundation of the brand. It's like, I want to make this for me. Hopefully there are other people that feel the same way. And, it turns out that there are a decent number of people that feel the same way. So it's been great.
Mm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of collaborations now, do you do many collaborations with your brand, or you do, let's say, one a year? What's the strategy there? You think that they are very important to, to share, to get more eyes into the brand? What are your thoughts on collaborating now that you have an established brand?
Yeah, so I think first, like I don't think we're established enough yet, right? Like I think maybe within Web3, we're definitely more established than in fashion in general. But our approach to collaboration is like I think when it makes sense and it feels really authentic, then that's the time to do it, right? And it doesn't always necessarily make sense. So I'll say like with Snowfro, that was like the right time, the right place. We wanted to prove this concept of we did a pop up in Miami, and it's like, what would it be like in the not so distant future when you can mint an NFT and then have it immediately made into a physical product in front of you, right?
Yeah.
Now, today, the technology doesn't exist far beyond like maybe being able to print it on a t-shirt, right? But
Mhm.
like in the not too distant future, like how cool would it be if you could walk into a product store and be like, hey, like I want that design, like I
Yeah.
want that silhouette, but I want it in like yellow polka dots, and like it's one of the options, right? Or whatever it is, right? Maybe a list of options, and then you can do that, and it's verifiably scarce with an NFT that's linked to it for authenticity and this and that. And that's really what we wanted to do with that collaboration. And it turns out like it was really cool. It was an operational I won't say nightmare, but it was a lot, it was a lot of work
Yeah.
because you didn't want to make a mistake. Mistakes could end up being costly and whatnot because you're dealing with rarities.
Yeah.
Since then, we did a collaboration with Snuffy, who's a good friend of mine, who's a tattoo artist in New York, where in around NFT NYC of 2023, we ended up doing a releasing iteration 3, which is our was our first edition of hats that we did, and
Hmm.
Snuffy designed the pins for us, right? And
Okay.
I we have a lot of other conversations going around collaborations, depending on like the size of the org that we're dealing with and who we're dealing with. Sometimes those move quickly, sometimes those move slowly. So
Yeah.
trying to and then also trying to figure out how do we tell our story as a really young brand, right? Because even though you might know who we are and you might know that we what we stand for, but if we were to partner with a larger brand bigger than
Mm.
us, maybe like their customer base doesn't know who we are, and we have to explain our story and get that story out there, right? Of like,
Mhm.
what does 90cc mean? Who are we for? Like, what is the community like? And that's what we're like hyper focused on telling that story right now, where our first three drops were they were drops, right? It was a hype drop model, and
Mhm.
now we're moving over to more of a always on model, right?
Yeah.
Still, I have ideas for how I want to continue with that drop model within that, but
Mhm.
also it's like having one product that if somebody wants to go out there, right? Because for the longest time when we started the brand, right, people be like, "Oh my god, like I missed the drop. Let me know
Yeah.
the next one." And it's like, "All right, well, cool. Like you like you can just whip out your credit card and go to the website right now, and then interact on the digital side of things on the back end when you
Mhm.
want." But really, a lot of it now is that storytelling, and some of it is going to be through collaboration, and some of it's going to be on our own.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I guess the tricky part is with the exclusivity and the scarcity, right? That if you do a drop, you need to kind of separate, right? What can be always purchased online, right? And then what is limited, right? I get that's what I think could be the issue, right? I was gonna ask you about physical stores because what I understand is you are completely digital, even though you visit a lot of conferences and events. Any plans, or maybe you have a store and I didn't know, any plans of physical stores? What are your thoughts about that?
For the time being, no physical stores. It's something that I would like to get to at some point, and if we do, that means like we're one executing on our vision and doing so profitably, which is great.
Mm.
We've done, I'd say, we've done pop ups, we've done like activations around certain conferences. So, for instance, we debuted our first collection in Paris at NFT Paris,
Mm-hmm.
and then at during NFT NYC, we did a pop up in Soho over the course of a few days, and we actually handed out we got a community grant from DGen, and we were
Mm.
handing out DGen to people for literally for walking in the store. And I think that's like kind of, not to like really like segue the convo a little bit, but I think that's one of the interesting value props that we have is, over the course of the last, I'd say like 60 to 90 days, with the airdrop meta picking up, we've gotten, the 90cc community has gotten airdrops, and like they've been distributed to members through different various ways, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
through an airdrop to the top 100 people, or an airdrop to the top 500, 600 people based on what your points within the ecosystem are and how engaged of a community member you are. We're like the first brand to ever do,
Yeah.
like, imagine like you wore Nike, and because you wore Nike you ended up getting free money, right? Like an
Yeah.
airdrop, not necessarily because it's where to earn, because I don't think that model necessarily works. I think
Mm.
if I were to tell you I'll pay you $2 every time you wear that t-shirt, then the second I stop paying you $2, you're never going to wear the t-shirt.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, if
Yeah.
you want me to wear the t-shirt, you have to pay me, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's much cooler where it's like, imagine, if you're like, hey, this is my favorite hat, and I check in, I interact with other people within the community, I do these things and engage with the community, and then all of a sudden, well, like I just got an airdrop for more than I paid for the hat. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty fucking cool, right?
Yeah.
Because other communities see the value of our community and want to like interact with our community. So
Yeah.
that's been like some of the really cool stuff that we've been able to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're doing, in a way, you're doing a favor to other communities as well, and also to the whole space, right? To the whole Web3 space, because it's a great way to onboard, right? Something that many have in mind these days, to onboard people, right, to the space through a clothing brand. So that's amazing. And you mentioned Degen, something I want to touch on in a bit. But I was gonna ask you, have you heard about Adam Bomb? Adam Bomb, these guys, they also had a fashion brand. They're very,
Yeah.
very big one. I was reading, I read his newsletter. He has an amazing newsletter, and he mentioned that one of the factors on their success early on was this cultural movement of street clothing, right, and street culture. And he said it was kind of powered by being in one place and being local in one area. Um, and in your case, you are kind of having the opposite playbook, right? Because you are kind of worldwide thanks to the internet. And so that's what I was wondering. If you were to open a store, or if you want to focus on in one location, where will that be? Or you think you will continue to do this, openly around the world? You think that's a better way to do it at this stage?
Yeah, no, I'm good friends with Bobby and Ben. I talked to them a decent amount. Yeah, I think what they built at the hundreds was amazing, right? In terms of streetwear and the legacy that they've been able to have, right? Especially based on LA. And I read his book. I think it's called "This Is Not a T-shirt" or "This Is Not a Shirt," something like that.
Mhm.
And that struck out to me as well, right? Building a community. So when even though geographically we're not in one location, right? We're in one location in that we're all, for the most part, in crypto, right? We're all
Mhm.
crypto natives. Whether you see somebody wearing this hat show up in one of the coolest things. So I wasn't at Consensus or NFC,
Mhm.
NFT, NF non fungible conference out in
In
Lisbon,
Portugal,
right?
yeah.
In Portugal. I wasn't at either of those locations,
Mhm.
but I felt like I was there because not only were people wearing our product at the conference,
Mhm.
there were some people speaking on stage talking about what we're doing, wearing
Yeah,
what we're wearing what we make, right? And
yeah,
so that to me is like that locality that you speak of, right? Specific to crypto, not necessarily to like a location. And that's
yeah.
one of the things that I think about a lot. If we were to launch a pop-up, to be perfectly honest, it would probably be in New York for our first spot, just because I'm personally from New York. I love
Yeah.
New York. I just love the vibe, and I feel like we have a lot of influence from New York in everything that we do. So that to me has been really interesting. But like I said, is long term I have a goal of like what I would like to see in terms of physical locations. I just know that right now we're not quite there yet, to necessarily think about it, right? And
Yeah.
like when you think about adoption and what does that look like, like I spent a lot of time, and I'm not sure how much time you're spending on Twitter these days, but
Mhm.
there's been a lot of conversation around celebrities coming into the space and launching
Mhm.
tokens and doing this, and what's right and what's wrong. Last cycle I spent a lot of time thinking about what does adoption look like, right? What can I do to help, right? Because I remember last cycle I would be talking to celebrities or people that have influence where they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I want to launch an NFT project." I probably spent more time convincing celebrities to not launch an
Mhm.
NFT project than to launch one, right?
Yeah.
And because I'm like, it's going to be a lot of work, right? And people are going to like want like extra
More.
things from you
Yeah. Yeah.
more, right? And it's like, frankly, like if you don't need to do it, like don't do
Yeah.
it, right? Like unless you're passionate about it, right? If you're like, oh, this is a way I can make quick money, that's like no, like you're not. It's going to be a lot more work than you think it is. But if you're passionate about it and you're willing to be like, in the trenches and like really involved in it, then it's great, right? Like I
Mhm.
know a couple people that came in last cycle are still involved, and so because of that, I've thought a lot about like what does adoption look like,
Mhm.
especially from the celebrity angle. And like this is what I'm proud of is like one is make something that people want first and foremost. A couple weeks ago Bradley Cooper was spotted
Mhm.
wearing one of our hats in New
Yeah,
York a few
I saw
times.
that. Yeah.
Chance the Rapper wore one of our jackets on the season finale of The Voice. You're talking about people that don't necessarily know about the crypto side of the brand. They just like it because they like the design. They're like, oh,
Mhm.
this is cool. Like, I want to wear this because it looks good. Right. And I think that's first and foremost. And I think that's something like as an industry as a whole, we really need to work on, right? Because it's like we're sitting here and be like, look at how amazing the tech is. Like you should want this because the tech is so good.
Mhm.
When it should be like, you should want this because the experience is so good,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's the way usually these things work, right? Adoption happens or anything, something goes viral. because people get some either utility or entertainment out of it, right? That
Yeah.
makes people want to keep coming back. So that's been kind of like my philosophy on it, of like not necessarily saying, okay, just the onboarding of the masses, like what does that look like? A lot of the things and a lot of the decision making that gets driven by what we do here at 90cc is from that mindset of like, cool, like how do you get somebody like Bradley Cooper to want to wear it and not be like, oh, like, is this crypto? Like, I don't fuck with crypto or whatever. It's like, no, it's a
Right.
cool hat. Oh,
Yeah.
guess what? There's this digital engagement layer that if I don't care about it, great. I have this awesome hat. But if I do care about it and I want to go deeper, then that's like the real power, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you have like the tools in place to build a really, really strong community around it.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's like an extra layer for the curious ones, and then they might notice, okay, this is powered by crypto, by blockchain. This is cool, but it's not the main, like the technology is not the main driver, right,
Right.
of adoption. And I fully agree. And yeah, I still think our space is. I mean, there are many developers, right, many technical people, and they are used to or very excited about the technology aspects, but it's in the experiences, in the products, in the connection to things, to movements, to the culture or utility, as you mentioned, where we would get more people in. And as somebody that has been around for a while, what's your where do you think we are these days? Are you excited? Are you worried? Are you kind of in between? What are your thoughts on where we are in 2024, mid of the year, compared to comparing through your whole journey?
You mean like in the cycle, in like this cycle?
In general, in the, I mean, in the cycle could be a way to put it, but in terms of the whole space moving towards being something, getting to the mainstream, being adopted by normal people. Where do you think we're far away from that, or where are your thoughts?
First I'll talk about the cycle because I think we're like I'm long and strong, like trying to be as long as I can for as long as trying to be as long as I can for as long as I can. Right.
Yeah.
Because I just think that like we have so many tailwinds coming at us as an industry. So that part, like, I don't trade. Like I'll put on positions here and there, but I'm not like trading intraday or trading over the course of like a week or swing trading or whatever, right? Like that's not really where my focus is. My focus, where I spend a lot of time, is like, okay, what does adoption look like? This is where I think like I really like the community that's been built around Farcaster for that
Hmm.
reason, is because I feel like a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, how do we get to a billion people on
Yeah.
chain, right? And how do we get them using crypto rails and decentralized rails? And I think, that's the part that like I find really interesting, right? And I'm trying to do my part, right? Of like, okay, like if I can onboard people through fashion or through clothes, right? Like when I think about it through the aspect of NFTs, right? It's very much like, okay, great. Like our t-shirts are non-fungible. Like we
Hmm.
understand that concept. We don't call them non-fungible t-shirts, but we inherently know that they're not fungible, right? Like
Yeah.
they're semi-fungible at best, right? If I have this shirt and you're wearing the same shirt and mine has a coffee stain on it, your shirt's worth more. They're not fungible at that point, you know?
Yeah.
And so like these are concepts that as humans we inherently understand, but I think by using the nomenclature of NFTs or non fungible and fungible, like, we're overcomplicating things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's like I want to meet people where they are, which is why I'm doing the things with 90cc. I think we're in the process right now of setting crypto up to have that one breakout app. I don't know what it is,
Mm.
but I think it's coming. And like what that looks like, I don't know. But I'm really interested in a lot of like the consumer side of things, especially like the easier you can make this, right? The
Yeah.
easier it is to onboard. That's one of the things we've been working on with our flow is like, how do I make it so easy that my mom can onboard in under 30 minutes? Like she can basically sign up and sign into the 90cc ecosystem without having to like save a key phrase, right? And
Yeah.
like, do something that's like not convenient and be able to do it on demand, and then have that optionality of saying, hey, like I want to self custody. So I'm going to move everything into
Yeah.
like my own self custody. But I mean, I'll tell you right now, probably like 80% of people, if not more, will not self custody,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just very inconvenient to do it. But I think it's very powerful if you want freedom in
Hmm.
order to have that option to self custody, because that means that you can exit the system of whatever it is when things aren't going your way, right? And
Yeah.
I'll use the FTX blow up as an example where I didn't have any money on centralized exchanges. I would hold like small amounts of
Yeah.
money that were like just for like stuff here and there and for paying stuff, but the majority of my stuff is kept in self custodied wallets. And I remember like as FTX was blowing up, I was like, all right, well, I have no counterparty risk because everything is like safe in my wallets.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm open to, the only risk that I'm open to is like the price of crypto
Yeah.
nuking because of
Hmm.
this event. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Like I have now gotten rid of the hard, like the riskiest part of it, of waking up one day and being like, oh yeah, like you thought you had X amount of money at this exchange, guess what, that's now zero. I'm like, fuck. Because the reality is that's the world we live in with in the banking system. The
Yeah.
reason why I bank with Chase is not because I think they're like the best bank or whatever. I think they're really good, but the number one reason why I put most of like my fiat with them is because they're too big to fail. If Chase fails, then the entire system is fucked. Like we have bigger things to worry about if Chase goes under, you know?
Right.
And so, but like I don't want to have to worry about things like that and contagion when it's like not necessarily like my line of work, right? Like in trading, like I always would have to, we always joke around that like you're just a risk manager, right?
Yeah.
You're just literally analyzing risk by the second and deciding if it's worth to keep the risk on for the reward that you think you can make, right? And
Right.
making the most educated guess that you can based on that. And so, but like most people aren't equipped to do that, right? Like if you have a full time job and your money's sitting in the bank, like you expect that money to be there, right? And so when you wake up one day and you're getting like some sort of pennies on the dollar, right? Whether it's 10% lower or 90% lower, like that's a risk that you don't really want. And that's to me is like what drew me to crypto, right? And I
Yeah.
think helping onboard people so that they understand it in whichever way that makes sense to them, and understanding that and having, I guess, a sense of financial literacy, right? Like one of the things that like I'm actually I've been telling the story a lot lately. There's a community member in Admit One, which when I met him, he didn't know he's a photographer from Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
When I met him, he didn't know anything about like crypto or NFTs. And literally, like a couple months ago, he was shilling us a meme coin on Beam. You know what I mean? And I'm like Beam, like not even like on Solana or ETH
Yeah.
or like Base or whatever. It was like on Beam. And I'm
Yeah.
like, bro, like this guy's gone so far down the rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
like I love that because he now has some sort of um like say in like what his financial freedom looks like, right? Like
Yeah.
I hope this cycle he makes hundreds of thousands if not millions of dollars, and then he has the financial freedom to do and work on the projects that he wants. And that all happened because he became financially educated through crypto. And that's
Yeah.
like when I see stories like that, that's like what gets me really excited of like this is why we want to onboard people, is because you want to give people that optionality of that freedom to make their own decisions and not be tethered to some system that maybe doesn't serve them.
No, definitely. You put it in a great way. I also feel like I've been learning a lot about money. Right. I've been over the last 3 years about how the banking system works, about managing risks. Where I keep my money, where I keep my crypto, where I keep my NFTs, all these things. And it makes you, at the end, it makes you think about things outside of crypto, right? And how everything works together. And the Chase example is a good way to put it. I'm also in centralized exchanges. One of my worries, and I think it's one of the what we saw on FTX, is that they are like a bank in a way, but they don't really have the banking licenses, right? So if they go bankrupt, or if they're this kind of, I don't know the term, but it's like an insurance for banks that governments provide, right? If they go bankrupt, and
Yeah.
that's a big risk, right, on exchanges because they are basically banks, and it's a big risk people are taking.
Well, well, like I think like to that point, right? Like you're talking about FDIC insurance in the
Mhm.
states, right?
Yeah.
So in the states, the way it works, and the reason why I understand this, right, is because of my trading background,
Hmm.
where I traded at a prop firm, right? And so the way that a prop firm works, and this is what happened with 3AC, right? Is
Hmm.
there's certain types of members, right? So I go the way a prop firm works is I put up X amount of money, you give me leverage for that, and then you make money off either my execution, you get like a percentage of what I make, right, in order for allowing giving me the tools I need to make more money. The thing that was always scary, right, was on days like that the market was crazy, or days that there was a flash crash, or like whatever, like even like what happened the other day with Berkshire, right? It went down 99%, right? Stuff like that, doesn't it's not very common, but it has been known to happen. And so on those crazy days, right? I could have like the best day of my career, but I would always be a little anxious because there could have been somebody at the firm
Hmm.
that could have lost not only all of their money, but then also the firm's capital. And I would have
Yes.
been liable for that. So, like, even if I made like $1 million, if somebody lost $100 million and the firm only had like $50 million, guess what? My $1 million is zero, right?
Yeah.
And so for that reason, like I always like have thought about that, right? And even like in banking, right? Like
Mm.
when contagion is happening, right? And you don't know where to put your money, but your money's insured only up to $250,000.
Yeah.
What do you do if you have more than $250,000? Like you can't even take that out of the system. What you have to open up, a bunch of different accounts
Yeah.
at different banks in order to stay under that threshold. Like there's like no exit. At least like with crypto, right? Like if FTX is blowing up, or you feel that some other centralized exchange might be under pressure, guess what? Just take the money
Yeah.
out, put it in your own hosted wallet, and then like ride it out. And then you can send it back when the dust settles, right?
Yeah.
But you don't need to take on that risk if you don't want to. And like
Exactly.
in the current system, like you're forced to take on that risk without even really knowing that you're taking it on. Because I feel like a lot of times, people just aren't educated in like the way our financial system works.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know how it is in the US, but here I live in Spain, and using cash, I mean, it has become a problem. I think you cannot pay anything with cash over 1,000 euros in the stores. So even if you want to get out of the banking system and have cash, which is of course not very efficient, it's not doable anymore. So you're forced to use the banking system, and then it happened in the crisis, the big crisis in 2008, 2009. Spain was one of the countries that was hit the hardest, right? And
Yeah.
banks went down, and so it's something that, yeah, I wouldn't think of this if it wasn't because of crypto and what I learned over the past 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, I mean, it's great to think about these things, and understand, right, how to handle your portfolio if you're an investor. Also for artists, I many of my readers and the audience are artists or collectors, and it's also important for them because at the end of the day they are earning in crypto, right? And collectors have, even if they are here for the art, it's an NFT, right? And they need to understand how to properly, take care of it in the long term. Um, I'm curious. You mentioned DGen. You mentioned you got a grant, and Farcaster, the ecosystem, and I know you also said you are a long term thinker, right? You invest on things long term. So I'm wondering what is it on DGen particularly that grabbed your attention, and why did you decide to go, let's say, big on this particular meme coin?
Yeah. So, meme coins in general are something that I've stayed away from, right? For better or worse. I probably missed out on a lot of upside by not participating, but it is what it is. I didn't really understand it. The thing that made sense to me about DGen, and I was watching DGen. I had buddies of mine telling me buy it, pounding the table, and I'm like, I don't know. The night Dracula launched
Mhm.
is when I bought a bunch of DGen. I was like, wow, like that to me was the first time that like still to this day, I think it's like the first meme coin that like had like utility, right?
Yeah.
In the sense that there was somebody else without necessarily being incentivized all that much. I think they got like a degen grant, but
Mhm.
like it wasn't that big in terms of like ecosystem grants that you've seen out there.
Mm.
Where I was like, holy shit, like a bunch of people are going to start building on this,
Yeah.
and they're going to end up launching, on top of degen and utilizing degen. Like it's just like, to me it's like, you know Dracula probably isn't the only one.
Yeah.
And
There are
so
many
when I
more.
did through that, I remember I was in bed. It was like it happened like at 1 o'clock in the morning or
Yeah.
something, and somebody pinged me in Telegram, and I was like, I like read it, and then I thought about it. I was like, holy shit! So I ended up buying a bunch,
Yeah.
or buying some, and then I ended up, I forgot how. I think I'm like 4x or 5x on it. And then as I was like thinking about it more, I bought like a bunch more. I think
Mm.
at around a penny. And I've been long since then, because like to me it's like, I don't know. I think it has a lot of good things going for it. One is, I think the distribution of it was really novel.
Mhm.
And I think I'm starting to see it copied over on Twitter with like a couple different coins.
Mhm.
But I think it was just like really novel. Even when I was like farming it, and by giving out tips on
Yeah.
Farcaster, I wasn't really farming it. I was just like, oh yeah, like I have a tip allocation. Like I'll give it to people that like interact with me, and I like get
Hmm.
replies, right? That to me was really interesting, right? The distribution method, the fact that Base probably not launching a token,
Yeah.
and Farcaster probably not launching a token for a long time, means that like Degen is probably the best proxy
On
of
base. Yeah.
what Farcaster looks like, and even maybe to a lesser extent Base.
Mhm.
And like to me, like those confluence of events, and I think the market cap compared to some other meme coins, and or even like L2s,
Yeah.
at this point, like I'm like, this just like the risk reward here is so good,
Yeah.
that even in this pullback, I'm like, yeah, I think it's only a matter of time till it hits new highs, right? Like I mean, you're big in the Farcaster community, so you know that meme, right? Like degen to a
Yeah.
dollar, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They say it's coded. It's coded in
Put
the
it
$1.
in.
Yeah, no, I agree also. I mean, they have been very, very, the team has been very noble and creating this new interaction. So first it was the airdrop, which was given to the original airdrop to Farcaster OGs or power users. So they grabbed a bunch of people that were very active and had kind of a big audiences. Then they created the tipping system, which was actually, I think, most successful than they thought, and they kept it up. And then the grants, right? And now there are ecosystem apps out there powered by Degen, and so it feels like they have been very creative. And as you said, there aren't many, I think, other meme coins doing something like this. And then they have the L3, which is also, and all these happen in what, 4 or 5 months, right? So they have been executing super fast. And I'm also not big on meme coins, but I've been enjoying, being part of these meme coin and seeing all the innovations. So yeah, very very excited about Degen. One last question on these new trends. Farcaster, you mentioned it already. You're one of the few, at least from what I've seen, influencers or people that had, this big audience on other platforms, on Twitter, that went big on Farcaster. You spent a lot of time on Farcaster, try to develop your audience there, where other people that already have an audience don't really, they don't want to go through this, right? Go from zero to, start over. So what made you make this effort, and what are you seeing there that's so interesting for you? And besides Degen,
I think the open. I think one, the quality of the conversation around there,
mm,
right, is one. Two is when I saw what really got me over there was frames. The first time I saw
mm,
frames, I'm like, holy shit! Like
yeah,
and this was obviously when they had in-app minting, right? But like you couldn't like charge people for it. And I'm
mhm,
like, dude, like how cool would it be if like I can put up a post and I can
yeah,
tell you something, right? Like that's literally like the holy grail, right? That's what
yeah,
literally Instagram tries to do. Like every single one of these platforms is trying to do that. And to have like a crypto native version of it right out of the gate has been interesting. And so, my thesis has been is like, okay, if there's, and this was my thesis when I got into crypto, right? I liked Ethereum over Bitcoin because I looked, even like not understanding the differences between the two at the time, because I got in it without obviously having the knowledge that I have today, but simply looking at one simple number, which is how many developers are working on it, right? I chose Ethereum over Bitcoin because I'm like, if I want to go where the developers are, because
Yeah.
one of these people is going to build something cool.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way with Farcaster, where I think you have a lot of developers that are building cool shit. Maybe Farcaster isn't the thing that goes mainstream,
Hmm.
but maybe something built on top of Farcaster does, right? And
Yeah.
like, I'll use Dracula as a great example of one of my favorite things about Dracula is I signed up for an account and I have like 15,000 followers.
Yeah.
Like I have my follower account from Farcaster. I don't have
Yeah.
to build a new follower account, which to me starts to become super powerful, because then I don't know if Farcaster is there quite yet, but I think it's probably there in the next couple months of like getting to that scale of saying, hey, like why start a new app where I ask
Yeah.
people to rebuild their social graph. I'll just let you I'll let you port over your social graph into this
Hmm.
new app. And then you'll probably use it more because like right out of the gate, like I don't go from having 15,000 followers to 100, right?
Yeah.
And having to build it and post on there. So that to me has been like super, super intriguing with it. I also think the login with Farcaster has a really good shot at
Yeah.
becoming login with Google for Web3.
Hmm.
Like from now on, like whenever like I see like login with Farcaster as an option, I log
Yeah.
in with Farcaster, right? Because guess what? I can connect the wallet that I don't have to worry about getting drained on my funds or whatever, because there's a proxy wallet that sits in between
Yeah.
me having to sign in with gmoney.eth, right?
Yes.
So that to me, like I just see like so much there. I think the conversations, or like I've A B tested like posts of like,
Hmm.
when I post something negative, yeah, I get way more engagement on Twitter. When I post something positive, I get way more engagement on Farcaster. And I'm like,
Mm.
that's where I personally want to be, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't like to shock post or get into trolling people or whatever just to like
Yeah.
get views or likes. Like I think the conversation is really cool. I think the developers are there. I think there's less of a focus on price.
Mm.
And I do think ultimately, even though maybe Farcaster in its current format isn't what like gets to a billion people, I do think like a consumer crypto app probably comes on like a
Yeah.
Farcaster protocol.
No, I agree. I agree. I feel like the amount and the quality of people there using that ecosystem in one shape or another is really really powerful. And with the channels, it's the right place for people that maybe are into crypto, but they are also not like, it's not their day job, it's not their life, to do stuff there, to still use it. It's not like going all in into crypto, which I feel it's more healthy, right, in general for many people. So agree. I'm big fan of Farcaster, and yeah, very excited about everything happening there. It's been great, G Money. Thanks so much for your time. One last question, which I'm very curious. I asked this to all the guests, and some have a hard time naming three. In your case, I think three creators. So three people, three creative people in the space or in general that inspire you, and yeah, you would like to shout out.
Okay, I would say Snowfro,
Mhm.
right? Obviously, I think everything that he did with Squiggles was incredible and really like opened up the space a lot. Two is I'd say Jack Butcher, because I
Mhm.
think Jack Butcher understands like network effects, and he's just like a next level thinker and
Yeah.
like really really talented and really creative. Where I'm like, man, like something he can like distill such a hard concept down to like a simple graphic. Where I'm like, that makes so
Yes.
like say less, right? Like I
Yeah.
totally get that with like this one picture. And then more recently, I'd say Die with the most likes.
Ah,
He recently had a drop with Glitch on Art
yes.
Blocks, and dude, he's a great guy. And like I've gotten the chance to hang out with him a couple times in person, and he's like,
He
yeah,
was in the
he's so.
podcast.
Oh, he was on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
He's
so
a
cool. He's so cool.
very very smart guy and very down to earth, right, and very very creative. Yeah, all the ones you mentioned.
My favorite mug. Hold on one second. I'm gonna get you
Yeah.
my favorite mug.
Okay.
I was literally at NFT NYC
Hmm.
at a networking event,
Uh,
and this was like, I guess, a teaser. I didn't know that
Nameless threat.
that he
Wow.
was going to be doing the residency, and I was
Yes.
like, I literally like took two of them. I'm like, I need to
Those
make
are
sure.
amazing. Those are amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I drink coffee out of it every day.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Gmoney. It was a pleasure. Thanks for sharing your journey, and I will keep an eye on 9DCC. I think you're building something amazing, and just for anybody listening, they can purchase clothing, all the accessories online, right? And do
Yeah,
you take crypto and also credit cards or different formats? Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
9DCC dot what's the
That
end of the
XYZ.
XYZ.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
All right.
Gmoney,
Thank you.
take
It
care.
was a pleasure chatting.
Bye bye.